There we go. Good morning, Senate Ag back in business. We are going to spend some time with our Deputy Chief Counsel, Office of Legislation Counsel, Michael O'Grady. He's going to give us a walkthrough on S-118. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. This is Mike O'Grady. I'm going to walk you through, as the chair just said, S-118, an act relating to agricultural development. The first section is a short title, declaring the bill to be cited as the Food Security Act. Section 2 relates to the seasonal application of manure, and specifically on page 4 to an exemption for liquid manure injection. You probably all know that there is currently in statute the ban on seasonal application of manure between December 15th and April 1. The agency can extend that or shorten that by 2 weeks, and they can also issue emergency exemptions. But this exemption on page 4 would allow that the prohibition shall not apply to land application of liquid manure directly injected to soils, provided manure is not applied in established channels with concentrated stormwater runoff, in non-harvested permanent vegetative buffers, in a non-farmed wetland, than 50 feet of a potable water supply, to fields exceeding tolerable soil loss, to saturated soils, or to snow-covered soils unless application is approved by a certified nutrient management technical service provider. So basically, underground injection would be exempt. Many of these conditions are already conditions for manure application. 50 feet within a well, you can't do that otherwise. You're not supposed to apply to fields exceeding T, which is tolerable soil loss, which is effectively the amount of soil that a field can lose annually and still maintain the growing of crops. So that's already a standard. You have to manage all your fields to T. You can't apply in a non-farmed wetland because you can't discharge to a wetland. But many of these things are already standards.
Right.
So the underground injection is really the key component of it.
So this is
What it's saying, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just going to put it in very basic terms again, that if you're injecting, you can do it later than December 15th, soil permitting. And
You can do it all year round.
okay.
Oh.
Great.
Your folder fell off.
I was gonna pick it
Oh,
up
wow.
in order. But I promise you, I didn't check.
We'll try to keep it from doing that again. Mr. O'Grady.
Okay.
Try to keep all that under control.
So should I move to the next section?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we can talk about after that. I'll start any part of it after that.
So the next section relates to the 3-acre stormwater permit. You probably are all familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a requirement from the Clean Water Initiative in 2015 that if you have impervious surface on your property of 3 acres or more, and it was never permitted under a stormwater standard or was permitted under the 2002 or prior stormwater standard, then it has to be redeveloped and come up to current operating permit standards. It has been controversial because it's expensive. There are claims that it's inequitable. It has the load reduction from the calculated implementation of the 3-acre has been part of the Lake Champlain TMDL. So removing it or accepting it or accepting certain portions of it has a consequence on the TMDL, and EPA will require that load reduction that's lost to be found somewhere else. And I say that with regard to this exemption, which is on, page 6 going to page 7, that the exemption shall not apply, or the 3-acre shall not apply to any farm subject to the permit requirement under C7. Well, basically, let me read this again. This exemption, there's already an exemption for farms from stormwater permitting if they're meeting the RAPs. And then that on page 6 to page 7, it says that exemption applies to any farm subject to the 3-acre permit. You just passed a bill out of here, S-124, that changes this language.
Right.
That says that the farm doesn't get the exemption from stormwater permitting if it had to have got a CAFO, if it was required to get a CAFO permit. So if it was required to get a CAFO permit, do you want it to still have to get a 3-acre permit? Right. And so that is there's multiple bills changing this subject and how it would be implemented.
And there lies the problem. That's something I hesitated on the first part about the manure spreading. So here's where we have. We have a 124 bill, S-124, which is probably, I hate to play it bigger than what it is, but it's pretty big. Because it was an agreement between two committees that have had a hard history of not agreeing, especially on water and runoff and all of that stuff. And we've got it to the point now to where it's done. It's agreeable. And so what we're going to be doing on a lot of parts of this S-118 is we're going to be looking to pick and choose things to add to a miscellaneous bill. Well, our pro town wants us to not run S-124 on its own language, but to after it spends its time in finance, to attach it to our miscellaneous bill of 484. A lot of what we're going to attach some of this language to as a vehicle to travel through. So what we need to be careful about as a committee is, if you believe that our work that we've done on S-124 is solid, which I think that we all do, what are we willing to put in along with that in that bill to make it controversial? So that when it goes over to the other side, a fight starts all over again, and it ends up maybe with all the good work we've done in S-124 not passed. So that's the needle that we need to thread. And also when we look at, okay, we're going to change on the first one, we're going to change the rules of injecting manure. Now we're going to start changing the language as far as with CAFO permit versus 3-acre rule permits and all that stuff. So we've got to be very, very careful about what we pick and choose as we go through. Not to say that some of this language isn't good language all the way through, but is it the way that we want to pass? We want to get through.
I can provide some additional information that might inform your decision on this section.
Yeah.
There is a bill, H 481.
Give us about 30 minutes if you have that time.
We're gonna do a tour and
Okay,
then we
so-
will return chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
H 481, and that would extend the timeline for the 3-acre. So 2028 for those sites in Champlain, Magog, and stormwater impaired waters. And then until 2033 for any site outside of those watersheds. And there's reporting back and money dedicated for 3-acre in that bill as well. And the Senate Natural Resources Committee this morning was discussing that they think that might not be enough. That they might want to have A&R report back on alternatives for achieving 3-acre that aren't inequitable or don't put this type of burden, or achieving the load from 3-acre without putting this kind of burden on residential property owners. So you're probably going to have an opportunity to revisit this language in a year or two when you know more. So that's information that may inform your decision.
But this is strictly about farms.
This is strictly about farms. And those with 3 acre, I don't know how this is being. Remember, farms are exempt if they were following the RAPs.
Yeah.
So I don't know how a farm is being asserted to need the 3 acre right now if they were complying with the RAPs. If they weren't complying with the RAPs, then they didn't qualify for the exemption, and then maybe at that point, A&R informed them that they needed 3 acre. But I have not heard a lot of discontent from the farm community about 3 acre.
Right.
So I want to know where this is coming from. I asked Senator Rom and she said it was given to her and put it in. But I don't know exactly where it's coming from.
And I guess my other question, what's the intersection between getting a CAFO permit and the 3 acre permit? I mean, it seems like they don't have a lot in common, but
It's a great question because for the CAFO permit, you're gonna have to manage that discharge so it doesn't discharge unless it's caused by the 5-year 24-hour flood, right?
yes.
That means confinement. Confinement is gonna be sufficient for a 3 acre permit. The 3 acre, you manage the runoff. You don't have runoff from your production facility unless it's 25-year, 24 hours. I don't know how they would.
I mean, I appreciate her effort to look out for farmers.
One of the reasons why I've kind of been hesitant about pulling the bill off the wall, one of the reasons why is that we were concerned about 124, but a lot of it was is that I wish that a lot of this stuff would have come directly to us and let us touch it out,
Yeah,
to be fair.
yeah, there's other issues here, or provisions that
It's like us
all
writing,
squarely in our world.
it's like us writing a housing bill and going, well, then we're gonna miss stuff. We just are. We're gonna miss stuff that we're not familiar with and that we're not privy to because we're just not in our world. So. Okay,
Okay.
let's continue on and let's ask a lot of questions as we go.
So the next section relates to right to farm. Which you've already passed. I can't forecast how it's gonna go in the House. It was moving along pretty smoothly. They were making some changes. And then yesterday afternoon, there was a little bit of a bumpy ride in there on this. Some disagreement about how language is being added or removed, whether or not to go back a couple of versions and look at things, whether to have straw votes or actually votes on the record on any changes. I don't currently know where it is, or I can't forecast how it's going to move. So I don't know if you need me to step through this because this is what you passed out.
Word for word, it looks like.
It is,
Yeah.
it is word for word what you passed out. And
You still know
Right.
the same stuff, right? You know,
Stuff that we've already done
Yeah.
the work on, probably even more in depth.
But those provisions that left here, and then if they're in the House Judiciary
Yeah.
Committee, and they removed the word trespass from what I understand. And there's some also small little tweaks that change it to some substantial extent, I think. And I agree with Attorney O'Grady. I don't know where it's gonna wind up. If it falls along party lines, it'll be certainly one way. If it falls along rural, urban axis, it could fall a different way. I don't know where it's gonna wind up. I have no idea.
I guess my hesitancy is that with that said, that let's just say we get this and it passes through, we're just doing the same thing all over.
Set up the same fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna go and well, some of the stuff, I mean, but you know,
some of the stuff, I just don't know that. You just have to be careful about this late in the season, how big of a fight that you want to start.
Yeah.
Because, and again, what you attach it to. If you've done some great work and then you, okay, well, we're gonna attach this to that great work, you're just gonna hold up your great work.
The other thing, you're in the first year of a biennium, right? If you find something that might be just too difficult with timing of remaining, you set up some process to direct that continue to be worked on in the interim, and you come back to it in the next session. That's not always very satisfying, but it's
Talking about that, council, where does the language have to be on a right to farm bill to where it can be decided in agriculture and not in judiciary?
that's a part of what was being talked about yesterday in judiciary. There were members of the judiciary committee that were saying, I don't know what this standard means. This is really something that ag should be looking at. One member said this entire bill should have gone to ag first. Why is it in our committee? And I said, traditionally it goes to both your committees. And so there was discussion about that, and there was some unhappiness, about or why don't we just send it, commit it to ag with the caveat that we're going to want it back when it comes out of ag. Which I thought was kind of brilliant, but that raised concerns as well. So I honestly don't. It could have gone to ag if it had. Someone asked, how do these bills get referred where they get referred? And that's a recommendation from the Senate Secretary or the Clerk of the House. And normally what they do is they look at what title the statute is being changed. And Title 12 is changed right to farm, and that's a judiciary title. And it's changing standards of review or basically authorization of suit, which is also a judiciary title, but it relates to agriculture as a whole, which is as a farming is an agriculture committee. It could have gone to either one. And in the past, they asked me what committees have they come to in the past and why. And I've said it depended on where the speaker of the committees wanted to send it to. When Shaft Smith was the speaker, he would send it to the committee he thought had time to work. So some years it went to ag and some years it went to natural resources. And that was, a capacity decision. The speaker and the committees have that authority, but it is currently in-house judiciary. Where it goes from there, I can't tell you.
Okay. Pass over this to the next section. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So you can go to page 13. This is in Title 24, Section 4413, related to municipal bylaw / zoning regulation of farms and farm structures. You're probably all familiar that those required agricultural practices, including construction of farm structures, are not regulated by municipal bylaw. They are exempt from municipal zoning. And there is a specific definition of farm structure on page 13. It means a building, enclosure, or fence for housing, livestock raising, horticultural, or agronomic plants, or carrying out other practices associated with accepted agricultural or farming practices. Now, there's two issues that are ongoing right now with farm structures. One is housing and farm employee housing. It is not considered to be a farm structure, and therefore it needs municipal approval. If you have an Active 50 permit on your farm for whatever reason, you might need an amendment to your Active 50 permit. there are concerns about the regulatory requirements for building farm employee housing on farms. And so what this language would first do would clarify that farm employee housing is a farm structure that is exempt from municipal bylaw regulation. But will be caveats on that. And those caveats are on page 14. It has to be housing owned or controlled by a farm employer located on farm premises and provided for the occupancy of a farm employee, the farm employee's family or household members for no payment other than the farm employee's labor. Payment of utility and fuel charges paid by a farm employee does not affect the designation of housing provided as a benefit of farm employment, and the employee housing needs to meet the U.S. Department of Labor standards for H-2A temporary agricultural employees. So you've all seen the H-2A workers that come here from wherever, and they have standards that need to be provided for their housing. Then a farm employer isn't just anyone engaged in farming. They have to have at least 1/2 of their annual gross income from the business farming, as that's defined by the Internal Revenue Code. So that would allow some farm employee housing, not everywhere, but in specific situations for those that limit use by farm employees and their families at a standard that's an existing standard that's already used for farm employees, and free of municipal regulation.
So H2A is called out here. What about folks that are currently working at farms that aren't H2A?
Well, the H2A is only called out here because there are existing housing standards for H2A and there aren't for other. So this is just using their housing standards, not saying it's only for H2A. It's for those housing. They've been deemed to be suitable, and if they're suitable for H2A, then they're suitable for every
Okay.
farm employee.
So if we took this language and we tried to pass this language, we did it, boom, done. We got it through our committee and all that, and we get it, once we get it out of our committee, who gets another swing at this? So whose toes are we stepping on? If we pass this language out, who gets another look at this?
The land use regulation is generally the authority of natural resources and energy. But in addition, your economic development committee has looked at this type of language in the recent years as well.
So likely both committees.
I think they probably would both want a review.
You go back to what, so at least half a person's earnings has to come from the farm for it to be considered what is. So no seasonal.
I mean, if you can get half of your income from seasonal farming, then you can do that. I mean, maple is only a couple of months long on production, and it generates a lot of income for many different farms.
What if it's mixed, how some people are in there?
If it's the farm employee and their household.
Okay, thank you.
So not everyone needs to be a farm employee, but one of them must. And there are other provisions where I drew some of these definitions in law about the fairness in treating farm employees if they're going to be subject to eviction or the rights that they might have. So I drew those definitions so for consistency with those other provisions. So you're not creating inconsistent standards on who's a farm employer and what's farm employee housing. Although I did have the H-2A standards Because if you don't add standards, municipalities are gonna be yelling about how you're gonna allow non-standard housing. This is a standard that is definitely proven. It's suitable.
We'll do that. We'll do that. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's the first issue with farm structures. The next issue with farm structures is that municipalities that kind of, they know that farm structures are exempt, but they still pass municipal bylaws and try to apply them to farms. And this most commonly happens with fences. And it most commonly happens in where farms kind of meet residential subdivisions or neighborhoods. And the towns try to say, hey, your fence is substandard, or your fence isn't the right color, or the right height. And so farms are having issues with that. And they go to the municipality and say, you can't regulate this because a fence is a farm structure, and you can see that in the definition of farm structure. It's clear at page 13, line 19. Farm structure means a fence. And so they're looking for some way to clarify the exemption. And what I've drafted here is on page 15. If a municipal bylaw or ordinance purports to regulate a practice regulated under the RAPs or to regulate a farm structure, the owner or operator of the farm, then the municipality may request an opinion from the Secretary of Agriculture as to whether the municipal bylaw violates this subsection. Now, that's actually practice. That's what most municipalities do. When there's something being built on a farm and there's a question of whether it's a farm structure or not, most municipal planners, most municipalities will contact the agency and say, is this a farm structure? And the agency issues kind of an informal opinion. This would formalize that process. It would formalize that process, and then it would provide, if the agency determines that the bylaw or ordinance does regulate an RAP or a farm structure, farms within the municipality shall not be required to comply with the municipal bylaw or ordinance.
So we have a situation going on in Senator Major's district where we have a farm structure that the town signed off on. It's being used as a town structure for most of the time period, other than in the summer months. They're bringing in bands and they're having community events and all that stuff. And then so the town signed off on it, but it's the state, is it DEC? Yes. Say it again.
DEC.
DEC has said no, that isn't a farm structure.
Well,
And-
did DEC say that it needs required wastewater?
Nope. They're just saying you can't count it as a farm building. Because, and jump in on this with me if we go. Because it's not a farm structure. It's a stage that you're using to perform live music on. Even though,
Is it the NRB? Is it Act 250 that's?
yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
And only 10 times a year is it used as all the other times it's
8 months out of the year, it's a
8 months out of the year, it's a farm
it's
structure.
a pole barn.
It's
Yeah.
pole barn. What is it?
Equipment.
Simple pole barn.
I've heard about this, like it literally has hay underneath.
Yes.
Yeah.
And no
Yeah.
one-
it. Right.
And so we're looking for an avenue as far as on that to
this
try
is
to.
what I was referring to, Bacon message.
So this is a question for Evan Tchaikovsky, because she's been doing the accessory on farm business stuff, and she knows this issue and has thought about it better than I have.
Okay.
Because this is where Act 250 and ag overlay. She's been doing the accessory on farm business stuff for the past couple of years, and I told her about it. I forwarded Senator Major's email to her. Right, we talked on the walkover from our offices, so she's aware, and I'll tell her that.
Okay, more to follow with that.
To contact you all, or if she will be contacted by you about that.
Okay,
I'll follow.
okay, good. I just wanted why we have the language here. Do you have 5 minutes, sir, to take a break just for a second, get to introduce some folks. Stay right where you're at, please. Welcome everyone. How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. So I think we met your other half as far as it was in here. So are you guys food resiliency as well? What do you do?
We're all in a food policy class at the University of Vermont in graduate school. We're all master's and PhD students.
Nice. And what are you doing here?
You guys are like smart.
It's debatable.
Well, we resemble those remarks. So what are you doing today?
We've been presenting 4 different topics to the House Committee on Agriculture, Forestry, Nutrition. I apologize. I cannot get the name of that committee completely correct.
Neither can we. We got rid of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, you
We
guys
just do
are
the ag
here.
stuff. Yeah. So it's interesting. Is it? Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah. So who's presented?
We all have.
Oh, yeah. So that's nice. Yeah.
What were your 4 different topic areas?
We're 2 groups.
Yeah, we're 2 groups.
Okay.
So half of us presented on Vermonters, feeding Vermonters.
Yeah.
Which we know you all are familiar with. And then the other group presented on PFAS.
Yeah, PFAS
Oh, yeah.
disposal options.
Yeah. So where are you doing your research? How are you doing your research on PFAS? Because that's a big topic as far as what was going to get tackled in this state. So what's
Megan can certainly talk about it. But what we found is we were assigned to submit like a 4 to 5 page brief and a 15-minute presentation, and we're getting all of our information from 100, 200 page documents, really condensing it today.
Yeah, so we did desk research basically to present to the committee on the different disposal options, sort of the costs and benefits of each one and what that might mean for the state of Vermont. But our goal was to present information, not necessarily to make specific recommendations, because we know it's a very complicated issue.
It is, and it's going to be a big conversation,
Yes, definitely.
especially in some parts of our state, down in the lower part, down to the Bennington area, and down in Senator Plunkett's area. PFAS is a big conversation to be had. So, yeah, yes.
So how many come from a farming background? Just kind of curious. Really good number.
Yeah.
Dairy crop.
Veggie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dairy.
Veterinary medicine.
Where are you all from? Starting over here. Where are you from?
New York City. I'm from Southern Vermont, Ludlow and Dairy.
Chicago.
Dairy.
Clinton County, New York.
Nigeria.
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
For me.
You've testified with us before. Weren't you in on a discussion with us on, actually, I think have you been in front of our committee? Or you didn't testify with us? I'm sorry.
I have a doppelganger out there, so like someone's always like, "Haven't you been here before?" I'm like, "No, never."
Well, there was a doctor from UVM that was testifying on, I think, the resiliency bill that we were doing, and
He was on Zoom.
yeah, he's on Zoom,
Oh,
so
good.
yeah, and the quality of the picture wasn't tremendous.
That
Yeah.
This is your second or third document,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got a double out there.
Yeah, I'm everywhere.
Well, nice. Well, we appreciate you coming in, and as we were said to the other group, I think one of the things that is most really kind of rewarding as far as what we see is we're seeing farming overtaking tourism now, and it's all because of young folks for the most part. I mean, dairy farmers now are almost at the age of 60, and we're finding people as small as a couple acres worth of, well, even some people even smaller now. We have some people in the cannabis trade that are doing it just on, a quarter of an acre, making a living on it as well. But we've heard now that we're up almost over 5 billion as far as what it's the impact on our state, and it's all because of young people. And again, some of these guys have already heard this, and I apologize for repeating it again, but a couple of months ago, I was in Middlebury, and they were gonna start talking about the impact of young farmers. And I said, oh, here we go. Here comes a section where we talk about petting my goat on my father's farm. And I mean, we were so wrong with that. I was so wrong with that because people started talking, they started talking about scaling and their aversion to debt and, you know, how they did it and how they worked. And I asked the question of the 4 farmers that were up there and about, you know, what we know why you're doing it, but what would you tell somebody else why you would farm? And the answers were just amazing. And one gentleman, about 25 or 26 years old, he said, you know, I'm out there on my tractor in my field. And he says, I'm that 12-year-old boy out on my tractor doing what I've always wanted to do. And so it's just amazing as far as the generational change that we're seeing that are getting into farming. And I think we've done a fair amount of work as far as making sure that the dollars are there so that you can what you grow, you can sell. We've worked really, really hard on that, but they've worked hard on that as well, because as you know, the food market is a worldwide phenomenon as far as how you get products out there. And people aren't willing just to buy and spend more just because it's organic. You have to be able to compete in that price range. And we have farmers in Vermont now going down in the middle of New York City and just competing in all the markets that are coming from all the world. I mean, New York is a worldwide hub of agriculture, and they're going down there and competing with those markets. So congratulations to all of what you guys do, and we appreciate you very much and appreciate you being in the industry.
Thank you for having me.
your time.
You're more than welcome to hang around. We're just gonna drone on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we'll have to keep moving.
See you all soon.
We'll see you again. You remember the doctor was talking about, right? Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So there's one last provision in the farm structure language, and that is on page 15, lines 16 through 18. That when the farm employee housing is unused by a farm employee, farm employer may rent it as a short-term rental subject to the state laws for short-term rentals.
That might work.
There is no limitation on that language, no duration for the farm employee to use it during the year. You know, they have to use it 6 months or 3 months or 4 months. So it's in there, it's requested to be put in there, and it's
So he's in there for, or she's in there for a month.
there would be no limitation if it had been used, if it qualified as farm employee housing.
That's kind of funny coming out of that committee that that's in there.
Yeah. And I'm not sure the pole barn that we're talking about is employee housing. I think it's,
Right.
it might or might not be.
And now, I don't think it is because there wasn't any wastewater.
It's just,
Yeah,
It wouldn't fall necessarily under that.
I think what the pole barn issue is that it's not farming as defined by Act 250. And it's probably not an accessory on-farm business as defined by Act 250. Because it's related to recreation or events and not in the sale of products, 50% of which is from the farm. And so it's not qualifying as farming or an accessory on farm business. And that's why the NRB is involved. And remember, the NRB is not a proactive enforcer. They don't go out and look for problems. They only respond to complaints. So if somebody in that community has complained, saying that the pole barn is being used for something other than farm. Should I move on?
yes, sir.
So it's good time. We're moving into accessory on-farm business, 10 USA 6081. And it is striking the requirement that an accessory on-farm business qualifies if they have more than 50% of the total annual sales of the prepared process qualifying product come from products produced on a farm. So that is no longer, that would no longer be a requirement, and that what would be required is that the total annual sales of the prepared or processed qualified products do not exceed $250,000 in annual sales. And it adds the language that would probably be very applicable to the pole barn. No permit or permit amendment is required for the construction of improvements for an accessory on-farm business for educational, should say recreational, or social events that feature agricultural practices or qualifying products. So if that stage is being used and they are also featuring agricultural products or practices, then they would qualify as an accessory on-farm business.
There you go. Covers that.
Yeah. So storing hay qualifies as an agricultural activity.
Yeah, when I was told is that like underneath the barn, it is like all hay 8 months of the year, and then they use the hay, and then they use the stage 3 months of the year. So I don't know if that would be a qualifying product as part of the recreational educational. If they were, circulating cider or milk or cheese or and that.
Aren't they there to do all that though? They have the entertainment and they sell vegetables and
Yeah.
So it falls under, it's a social event that features agriculture practices and qualifying products. So
That's how I'm remembering too.
yeah,
So the stage is kind of up front and then they sell stuff. It's.
Yeah.
I think just someone got a bug of it, but
Maybe the music got too loud and.
I don't think it's so secluded though.
Well, I think it's beyond that. I don't, because the town's willingly signed off on it. Everybody's willingly signed off on it. I mean, it's coming right from an Act 250 violation. That's where it's coming from. So somewhere along the way, somebody's decided that this is just DEC stuff or NRB stuff or
I guess
something bigger than what it is.
maybe traffic gets increased to the point where it's annoying to somebody. I don't know.
That's often when the cars have to park on the road. That's when neighbors get aggravated, especially in certain times.
I'll look at your
but this particular, that's not it. It has its own little parking spot and it's so secluded. I mean, that's all of that work. There are other that will come under that, but what we were talking about, that's not the case. So
So not to hijack what Michael's doing here, because this time is very
Yeah.
valuable, but we're talking about that. Somebody needs to talk to the person that made the decision. And that's what needs to happen. To get to the bottom of that, say, what is going on here? Help me understand what is going on here. And that is going to be the quickest point to it. And that's going to see, you're going to find out where the rub is. And then go from there. Because you can do a lot of different things trying to get around that until you find out exactly what, give me the language that upsets you to where this can be in this way.
Do you know if they have a jurisdictional opinion from the coordinator?
I'll find out. But one of the things is kind of this to let them go this year is to kind of ignore the LRB is going to ignore so then just do it and then we got to rectify this anyway. I think for not just for this but for other situations. So but I'll find out.
I mean, it is a recurring issue.
Yes.
And to the extent it was addressed by accessory on-farm businesses, but the recreational and social events, the weddings and the parties, those are the things that have not been addressed.
Yes, and it's in a time where farmers, quite frankly, are struggling. If we can have them have additional revenue I'm all for it, just so that the impact, you know, obviously there has to be the impact of, the neighborhood, whatever. But if they can have some additional revenue.
Well, if we can get them through this year, we can research this on our next year, and we can address this in a good way. I think, and we're getting a pretty good idea for it. But it'd be interesting to hear what the rub is from the person that's made the decision.
And I'm sorry, Steve, that you were gonna say something, Peterson? Oh, all right.
So moving on, the next section relates to use value and what qualifies as agricultural land. There's a couple of different ways that agricultural land can qualify. One of which is on page 17, line 7. If you produce an annual gross income from the sale of farm crops. There are farms out there that are donating crops for food bank, for food security, etc. And they would like to be eligible for use value when they're donating the equivalent of those income thresholds on page 17, line through 10 through 12. That's really what that is, not just sale, donation of the same value. And then moving on from there, you move into some income tax provisions. The first is to as part of taxable income from the state income tax, you will see on page 19 that certain types of profit would not be considered as taxable income. The first would be any net farm profit, provided the taxpayer's net farm profit did not exceed $10,000. And basically a tax credit of $10,000 and adjusted net capital gain income from the sale of real estate that is part of the farming operation, provided the buyer continued using the real estate as part of farming and is related to the seller by blood, marriage, civil union, or adoption, or the buyer was an employee of the farming operation for a minimum of 10 years prior to the sale. And you'll see similar language in the property transfer tax exception on page 10. The following are exempt from the property transfer tax transfer that is part of a farming operation, provided the transferee will continue using the real estate as farming, is related to the seller by blood, marriage, civil union, or adoption, or was an employee of the farming operation for a minimum of 10 years prior to the transfer. And then the effective dates, most are effective July 1, except some of the taxable provisions have to take effect retroactively to January 1, 2025. This is always a good teaching moment. Your laws apply prospectively, generally, except when you say they apply retroactively, and you have to apply laws retroactively every year, and most notably for tax stuff, because tax provisions are not trued up to your legislative year or the state fiscal year. They're on a calendar year basis. So whenever you enact tax provisions, you have to either make them prospective or retroactive.
Yes.
Michael, do you know what the rationale was? The value of the donated crops. I think it had to be in 1, 2, 3, or 5 years preceding.
Yeah.
But the property transfer piece is 10 years.
Well, it's 10 years for the employee, right?
I thought it said the transferee.
The transferee was an employee of the farming operation for a minimum of 10 years prior to the transfer.
Okay.
So the person that's buying the property was an employee for a minimum of 10 years. And you'll see that same language on page 19. The buyer was an employee. It's just in the property transfer tax, the buyer is called the transferee.
Okay.
Any questions?
No. We couldn't have worked on it for a while.
Well, I don't know that how much of that we can grab out of it right at one time. I think it's dangerous to a lot of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much uncertainty with the 3 acre piece for me.
I mean, they were already, I mean, at least a couple sections of this, what they're trying to do, we're already addressing.
Right to farm, yeah.
Right to farm, I mean, we addressed the manure some, but not quite into the where it is. That's a whole nother long discussion.
Yeah, I thought all we did with that was reaffirm the agency secretary's ability to get to an emergency situation and basically say, hands off, go ahead and do it if you need to, kind of.
So that is in, yes, he did authorize that.
But I think my real point is gonna be is that if we were trying to change that, that's a year long project, not something they do even in the even after crossover part of it. I mean, it's a long enough thing to where it's got enough committees that's gonna try to get to this.
Well, you remember I kind of wanted to push this
Yeah,
and I went to the lobbyist and I never got feedback. So I don't see any success rate. I said, get me something, and I never got anything back. And then that's a good idea, but it definitely would have to go through some testimony first.
yeah. Well, thank you. You're welcome.
As always.
Yes,
Yeah, it's always makes it a lot clearer.
Thank you for the referral. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon.
Take care.
Thank you, Michael. Again, I mean, I'll put it back up on the wall, I think, and it's not that some of that we would want to tackle, but I think there's so much in this thing that they're almost just separate parts and pieces and bills. Other than just trying to grab something and putting it onto a miscellaneous piece. And again, I think we've got some of it addressed already.
The housing's pretty good. I do like that.
Yeah, I do.
They're up for more housing. I think that's why it started over there, because Senator Hinston is in that realm.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Linda, I think we'll call it a day.
Thank you, Linda.